What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for listening. I wanted to put this in the top of the show. Make sure you subscribe on Patreon, patreon.com/Brennan Tassif. Check out the merch store at brennantcomedy.com to get your ex-drinking buddy merch. Subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. As always, we're coming to you live from Gotham Production Studios, and I hope you enjoy the episode.
Grab me a beer and grab me a coke. We bout to sit for an hour, bullshit and tell jokes. And please don't mix it up, cause he done sobered up. Brennan T Comedy on your social media feeds. And Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. I am your host, Brennan Tassif. If you're new to the program, quick rundown of the show. I used to be everyone's favorite drinking buddy. It's my favorite thing to do, hang out with friends, get drunk, do drugs, get in all sorts of trouble, and then reminisce about those crazy stories. I am sober now, but that is still one of my favorite things to do. Hang out with someone and reminisce about those crazy old days. Most weeks I will be joined by a guest. This week is no exception. All the way from New York City, Emma Willmann!
What's going on? Thank you. Thanks for having me.
What's up?
What's up? I'm so immature. We were supposed to do, you do 10 seconds of silence before you start recording, and I was laughing.
I could not.
I don't know why.
It always depends on who's in the room. Sometimes people are just like looking at their phones. And
Right.
I'm like, all right, cool. But when I'm with you, I'm like,
Yeah, I knew I wasn't supposed to like laugh, and then he was like, "Be quiet for 10 seconds so they can do something called a check to like get the sound levels." And I was like,
I'm so happy you're here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I've been excited to have you on. Tell everybody, let's plug everything up front.
Please.
Tell everybody the social media, everything like that. Any dates you got coming up? This will come out in about 10 days. So anything you got coming out?
Okay. All right. I'm on TikTok at I am Emma Willmann. I'm on Instagram at Emma Willmann. Those are the ones I post on the most, and I always try to get back to people on Instagram. My website is IamEmmaWillmann.com, and I do have some dates on the road coming up. I'm going to be actually in your old stomping grounds, Florida.
Shouts out.
I'm going to be in Orlando.
Okay.
And Tampa.
Yeah. You doing Side Splitters?
No, I'm doing the Improv. I'm doing the Orlando Improv and the Tampa Improv.
Okay.
And then
Orlando Improv. I'm going to know a bunch of people that they got there hosting for you and stuff.
Oh, nice, sweet, yeah. Like, you know who my buddy's featuring for me that that used to live in L.A. He moved down to Florida. Actually, Richie Lies.
Oh, okay.
He was in L.A. and then he just moved down to Florida.
Okay.
But yeah, I've got a bunch of dates coming up, so check it out. Yeah, safe space for non-drinkers for sure.
Absolutely. So I want to talk about it. Before we get too far into the, well, I mean, it all kind of coalesce with each other, but I wanted to talk to you
about. Good word choice.
Thank you. So because you've been doing comedy for a while, and you and I kind of met. I don't even know if you remember, but when I first moved to New York, my girlfriend and I would go to the Stand a lot and the Cellar a lot. And I used to always wear my ex-drinking buddy merch. And she would always be like, Brennan, don't wear your own merch. And I go, it's going to work. One of these days, someone's going to. So we get down there and we're sitting in the front row. This is like 2 weeks into moving into New York. And you go up and you go, ex-drinking buddy. What is that? Is that like, and I was like, see, I told you it would work.
I have no recollection of this.
Well, you do a lot of shows. So this is over a year and a half ago. But at that moment, I was like, and then because you were talking about like how you don't drink anymore and everything. And I was like, eventually I've got to get Emma on the podcast. And now here we are.
Here we are, baby.
A year and a half later. But we ended up becoming friends through Dan Lamort. He kind of introduced us, one of my best buddies, Dan. And then you and I kind of became fast friends. So tell everybody when you like started comedy, how you got into it, because I know you've done the True TV thing with Kevin McCaffrey and stuff. So how did all of that kind of come to pass?
Oh, the True TV thing I did was the reality show about moose poop.
Yeah.
But that almost made me want to start drinking again. But you know,
how'd you get into comedy? Like, have you always been a fan of stand-up, or like, kind of how did it happen?
I wasn't always a fan of stand-up, but I was always really in entertainment. So interested in entertainment. I grew up in really rural Maine, and really rural. So, and the idea, my parents didn't watch comedy. The idea of stand-up was not even floating around our house, but I would be really into music. So when my parents got divorced, my dad got cable. Like that was like,
okay.
Come over to dad's house so you can watch cable.
Hey.
And my sister was like, I'm not falling for that. I want to stay at mom's. I was like, sign me up. So I lived with my dad. I'm falling for that. I lived with my dad. My sister lived with my mom. And then my half brother lived with his mom. So all the kids were kind of like split up. And I used to be so into watching music videos. And I was so attracted to like rap music because of the message kind of where it was like, it's not where you're from, it's where you're at. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
and the reason that resonated with me was kind of while this is all happening, I started getting in trouble in school, started ADD, special ed. So then I was like, I'm not doing well in school, but I want to be I always had like real delusions of grandeur.
Yeah.
Which I also think it's like, yeah, I mean, I was an ambitious little kid. I always was hustling with the lemonade stands. Like I was always like selling pies to my mom's friends.
Really?
Oh yeah. My mom was like, you got to stop. These pies suck. They feel pressure to buy them from you because you're my kid. I'm popping up at the book club meetings like, who wants an apple crisp? And they're all like, fucking apple. Shit. But I knew that. I knew they were trapped at the book club, so I'd pop in. So I was always hustling. And then no interest in comedy, but interest in entertainment. I interned at a recording studio in high school.
Okay.
I wanted.
This is in Maine.
No.
Okay.
So my stepsister at the time, she had a boyfriend who knew a guy who was an engineer at a studio in Boston.
Stepsister on dad remarry or mom remarry?
Yes. So my dad's been married. He's been engaged quite a few times. He's been married, I think, only 3, and he's been with my stepmom now for a long time.
Okay.
This is it for him. But
so this is the stepsister?
no, this was
The one before?
This was like a couple ones before.
Okay.
She had a bunch of kids.
Got it.
Yeah, she had a bunch of kids, and that stepsister, her
Boyfriend's
was friend.
Yeah.
So I called up, and I don't know how the hell I knew how to do this, but I do think this ties in with addiction a little bit. I mean, I'd be curious what you think, just in terms of like being a little sneaky.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
So
I tell people all the time, I left home at 17. Like my survival skills,
right.
That's one of the hardest things about being in recovery is my entire survival set, like my skill set, everything is based in addiction. It's like based in survival.
Right.
So
Sneak.
like, yeah.
And I've tried to look at like where exactly did that come. I don't know if it was me kind of needing to play off my mom to my dad, and where that pressure was definitely there because they like hated each other and it was really complicated, drawn out divorce, lots of custody stuff. So I think to feel safe with each parent, or actually no, I think I would feel guilty. I would feel guilty when I was with my mom, and I'd feel guilty when I was with my dad. So I'd talk about the other parent to the other one.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I think it stemmed from. And I would like manipulate stories a lot.
I tell people all the time. So when I got to college, I was going to major in business, and then I was like, I don't like this. And I took one political science class, and I was like, oh, I love this.
Oh my God.
People
Yes.
go, why do you like politics and political science so much? And I go, because I've been playing politics since I was 12.
Right.
Like, I'm good at this.
I interned at the State House when I was in college.
Yeah, like, and it's just one of those things, especially being a child of divorce and dealing with like different things. Like, you can't make this side too angry, but you also can't make that side too mad. And like, we've been playing politics since we were kids.
100% little lobbyists.
Yeah.
100%. And it's interesting you say that because when people were like, when I did the State House, they're like, how do these internships in music connect these teams? And I was like, oh, 100%. I was like, in rap music, like, they lobby for each other. They're like, this is a successful person. I'm going to feature this up and coming person. They're all on the label. They're pushing that agenda. It was
absolutely
like Paul Wall.
What do you think we're doing here with the podcast?
Right, exactly. I was like, Paul Wall. They're pushing the agenda and the image of Houston or whatever it was.
Yeah. The dirty South.
Exactly.
I was raised on that kind of stuff. Trillville.
I love Trillville.
What?
Some cut. My girlfriend listens to that song all the time. I love Little Scrappy. Wait. I don't want to get too. I'll finish the story about what I did that was sneaky.
Yeah. How'd you get?
I fucking Googled Little Scrappy for the first time 3 days ago, and dude, some shit's going on.
Really?
Yeah. He told his mom. He did this whole thing about how his mom was a sex worker, and it was upsetting to him that she used to have men over to the house, and he like talked about all the emotional trauma from it and how his like wife helped him figure it out. And because I Googled Little Scrappy because I was like, did he get like what's going on with him? And that fucking popped up.
That's insane.
Yeah,
and this happens
in touch
to me.
with his emotions.
You and I have talked about this before, but I listen to so much podcasting that I don't really listen to music much anymore. And when I do it at the gym. And it's always the same kind of like stuff from when I played college and high school football. So it's like, knuck if you buck and like all
fucking jock jams. You listen to that?
Yeah. So it's a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that happens where I'll be like, whatever happened to young Buck?
But Wait,
whatever.
Do I know what happened to Young Buck? I think
Nashville, Cashville, Young Buck.
because he got shuffled between. There was
He
some
was in
problems.
G Unit, and then he kind of wasn't. And then he released a solo album, and then that was the last I heard of him.
Did he end up getting in Baby? I haven't heard from him in a while either, Brendan. Call us,
Young Buck, if you're out there.
if you're out there. Yeah. So
you get this job.
But how I got the internship, this is a sneak thing. So I was young. Like I must have been in 9th grade or something. And I was like fixated on how the hell can I get an internship at a record label? No.
And you're like 14 at this time.
Actually, I'm sorry. I would have been a junior in high school because.
So 16.
So my high school let people spend 2 weeks doing an internship and you could get credit for it.
Okay.
You had to like submit a proposal and all that. But I'm like, I don't know anybody. I don't know. I'm not in. I'm not in with Cash Money yet. What am I going to do? So this one guy worked at a hip hop recording studio in Boston. It was called Waltz Audio. And
Shouts out Waltz Audio.
shout outs to Waltz Audio. So I called and like couldn't get a hold of anybody. So I was like, all right. So I was like, hi, I'm calling blah, blah, blah back. Like, hi, this is like da-da-da. I'm calling them back, even though they had never called me. Yeah. So like, sure. So they connected me through to the guy. And he was like, hello. And I was like, hi, I'm a friend of Ralph's and I'm looking for an internship and I will do anything. And he was like, which looking back, like that sounds so like sexual. Like, I don't know what, like he was.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
You know what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
I was specific. I was like, nothing is too big or too small. Like, I will, anything you need. And he was like, he was kind of like, he was like, I called you and I was like, I was just, Ralph I thought we had played Photech, so I just wanted to make sure we got the touch base. And he was like, okay.
Touch base.
And he was like, all right, you know what? Let's do this. So then I went to Boston.
Sick.
Yeah,
That's
and I was
awesome.
like, I'll get school credit for it. And
How far is Boston from Maine?
it's pretty far, but my mom had maybe like 6 hours.
Oh my God.
But my mom had a friend that lived in the area, so we got to stay with her. And then I would go in, and I did that internship, I think, my junior and senior year. And it was like, I would just sit in the studio, sometimes take notes for him, and then I would go get him blunt wrappers like all the time. So I was always like getting them blunt wrappers. And then on the side, I was trying to write lyrics to be like, maybe I could hand this off to one of the rappers, do some ghost writing. And nothing really took off, but that was like my first
foray into entertainment.
Right, first foray. But that was a sneaky thing to be like, I'm going to call him back. Like, I don't know where.
I used to email comedy clubs from like I created an email address, and then I would email comedy clubs, be like, hi, my name is so-and-so, I represent Brendan Tassif.
100%.
Like, I used to email clubs as my own manager.
100%.
Because it looks so much better than if like the comic emails.
Absolutely.
Never got anything out of it. And this is back when I was drinking, so the emails weren't very cohesive. But
still a good idea, yeah.
Still a good idea.
He's awesome.
So hilarious.
So, LOL, you're a fucking dumb piece of shit if you don't book him, you fucking loser.
So after the internships and stuff, how did you end up in New York? How did you end up doing comedy?
So then after the internships, I went to college in Boston, and I remember I was so fucking.
Where did you go?
Simmons.
Okay.
Best time of my life, man.
Yeah, me too.
I had the best time in college because it was like stable living environment. I started doing really well in school. I was drinking, and it was still fun.
Yeah.
Although I just skipped over something.
Okay.
I did go to rehab right before I went to college.
Let's get into it.
How did I forget about that? I went to rehab. Wow.
So we'll get back to the comedy thing. But,
so basically then I went to college, and then after college I ended up, I was like looking around at stuff, and I had gotten into some things, but nothing was really clicking. And then I went and I saw a girl doing comedy, and then I started getting into it after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because your timeline as far as drinking and stuff, that happens in high school.
Yeah. So the first thing I turned to was food.
Okay.
So I was like,
was this when your parents were getting divorced, or like just out of anxiety? Because it's interesting when I talk to people.
Maybe before too, but I really kicked up.
Yeah, I talk to people about my anxiety because I've got scars all over my body from hurting myself and stuff because I just didn't know how to deal with all the stuff going on in my head.
100%. I used to burn myself with cigarettes sometimes.
So I would be like, well, if I inflict physical pain, then I can get my mind off of everything that's going on the inside. And people they'll be like, oh, when did that start? And honestly, I can't tell.
Right.
Like, I've always had this horrific anxiety. Like I was telling you, something happened over the last couple of days, and I've been sober for going on almost 5 years. And just thinking about it, I threw up because I got so anxious. And it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know. Like, it just happens.
Do you take any anxiety drugs?
I don't take anything at all, ever.
I do take Zoloft and Wellbutrin and Vyvanse.
So I'm.
But
I
but
mean,
Zoloft is the anxiety one.
yeah, my sponsor is very big on like if you go to the doctor and you need to take this stuff,
It
then
might
take
help.
it. Yeah, but I've always been because I'm such an addict that like whenever I get
But
pills
Zoloft,
for anything, is it?
You can't. I mean, what could you? I don't know what you could do.
Well, because I've taken antidepressants before, and then just willy nilly been like, oh, I'm just gonna stop.
Yes.
And that's so bad for your brain chemistry.
Okay,
like
so,
I've started
yes.
having seizures and stuff.
Well,
and then I went to the doctor, and they were like, you can't just stop.
Right. Well, I have done that before with my Wellbutrin where I'll just forget.
Yeah.
And then I'll be traveling and I'll leave it someplace and then I feel really fucking depressed and I get so angry because my girlfriend's like, be honest with me, have you stopped taking your antidepressants? And I'll be like, maybe, but that has nothing to do with this.
I'm right in this situation.
Yeah,
Depressants have
100%.
nothing to do with anything.
I'll be like, I say the same thing every time. I'm like, if you look on paper, these are reasons someone should be depressed. Why would someone not be depressed? This is real. You don't know me, bitch.
I love
You don't
it.
know me. And then it's
I
like
do the same thing.
so dramatic. But if you can remember to take the Zoloft and a low dose of it, it's not something, to my knowledge, you can
It's
abuse.
not an addictive.
It's not an upper at all.
Okay. Yeah, because that was the problem was when I was like 22, I went to a doctor because I was like, I need to figure this out.
Sure.
Because I've been self-medicating for years. And then, so I went to a psychoneurologist, and within 2 months, he had me on Adderall, Klonopin, and Xanax.
This is
and
the problem.
I almost fucking died from that.
This is the problem. And that's so fucking frustrating because I remember in high school, I went to see this guy and he's now been disbarred. And I really liked him because his name was Fred and he's disbarred. So I feel very comfortable saying his like full name, Fred Reeser. And I really liked the guy. And my dad would drive me up. He was a psychiatrist, but I was seeing him as a therapist.
Yeah.
And I forget exactly. There was some reason that I ended up seeing him in the first place, but he would let me basically diagnose myself. Like I'd be like, Fred, like I'm anxious, or Fred this. He was giving me I was on so much medicine. Similar thing where it's like everything all at once. At one point I was on like bipolar meds, like all this stuff. I was taking a handful of pills. I was like a zombie. And he would just let me, like I remember holding this little book and I would always be like, I used to do this when I would see mental health people. I would start asking them how they're doing. I'd be like, well, how are you? How was your experience with this? And they'd be like, well, we should keep it on you. But then up until I think I was 26, I kind of I used to think of it like getting them to crack. Yeah. Because they'd be like, I shouldn't be telling you this, but like da-da-da-da-da. And then Fred came and visited me while I was in college. Yeah. And I was like, I like him. Like he was like my buddy. And then people were like, it's a little weird that he's your psychiatrist because we would meet and get like coffee and he'd tell me about his fucking daughter and his girlfriend and whatever the fuck. And then years later, I looked him up and it was like disbarred for pushing one of his clients down the stairs and she was living with him.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I was like, Fred. And I just liked him because I think he was like a consistent adult in my life and I had no fucking concept of appropriate boundaries with adults, I guess.
It's also so terrible when you're younger.
I was so young. I was like 15.
No idea. And you have no idea what's going on in your head. You're just like, why do I feel this way all the time? And like that was one of my big things when I was, because I didn't have a lot of friends. I was always a loner. And I remember.
Even with sports?
Yeah. I was bullied I should talk about this. This is also something that has shaped me. So I got into sports at a young age. And even as an athlete, like playing sports, I would be bullied and heckled by all my teammates. Like, I don't know what it was. It was just always very much like, and I used to.
Maybe they could pick up that you were like sensitive, which is a good thing, which is a good thing to do.
And I think that's exactly what it was. And I always played the victim. Like, I overplayed it a lot. Like, I would always be the one, like, at the family get-togethers crying, being like, nobody likes me. Everyone hates me.
Thank God we didn't meet. We would have started an emo band. If that age, like,
I was just so upset all the time. And like my mom says, she brings up a good point. She goes, my first reaction was always to anger and then into sadness. And she was like, you just hated, she was like, you hated the world. Like it was you against everybody all the time. And that's how I still feel in a lot of ways.
I get it. And then it's also like, yeah, but they were doing some fucked up shit.
But
don't get me started.
On paper.
Right. That's the tricky, but I get it. I mean, I went to anger too. I would be angry and I'd be secretive because I started like hiding how much food I would eat. And then I remember just being like pretty fucked up because I went on Adderall at some point in high school and then I lost a bunch of weight and I didn't even realize it was happening. And people were like, whoa, you look great. And then I started like lowering the Adderall dose because I was pretty geeked out. Like my dad was like,
You gotta calm down.
You gotta calm down. I was like organizing his comic books at like 6 a.m. on a Saturday, and he was like, who is this?
I remember,
Not
just side
good.
note, when I talked to that psychoneurologist, I
And
was
they
like,
shouldn't have done that. That
I
was
was-
fucked up.
I know,
They
but I
really
was
should
like,
not have.
oh, what is Adderall? And he goes, oh, it's speed.
Cool, dude.
And I was like, oh, like the street drug? He goes, yeah, actually, molecularly, it's the same exact thing. And I was like,
Molecularly?
rev it up.
Yeah.
Rev it up.
Sounds molecularly awesome. Like, why would he? But why would it? What's crazy too is to introduce all those variables without a way for you to then say, like, because when I finally did get a good psychiatrist, he was like, I went to him guns blazing, where I was like, okay, I need an antidepressant, I need an anti-anxiety, and I
Because
need
you've been diagnosing yourself since Fred.
right. And this was years later.
Yeah.
And he was like, whoa.
I'll tell you what you need.
Right. He was like, first of all, we have to have a couple sessions. And I was like, no, I'm so fucking depressed. I need stuff now. And he was like, we have to do a couple sessions. He's like, and then I'll do one. And then after a couple weeks, we'll do another one. And then we can talk about an ADD drug. And I
Yeah.
remember being like, fuck. But I was seeing this good therapist, and she was like, this is the type of person you really do need to see.
That's
And she was right. But I was so annoyed because I was like, you want me to wait weeks? Like,
I want them now.
I feel so, like, I was like, for me to get to the point where I'm seeing you, I'm already so depressed.
I'm already down the rabbit hole.
So I was
far.
like, what are we gonna? And then I remember this, and it's pretty funny. But he was totally serious. He was like, also, he was like, I do believe nutrition plays a factor in this stuff. And at this point, I'm like, this fucking guy's bonkers. He goes, I want you to drink a cup of black coffee, like you can use your coffee, that helps as an antidepressant. And he goes, and also start eating organic blueberries. There's a specific kind from Trader Joe's that has.
I see you eat blueberries all the time.
I do, yeah. If I'm sad, I'm like fucking mainlining blueberries. But I remember him saying that, and I was just like, I couldn't believe it. Like, I was just so bothered.
Were you like pissed?
So pissed because I was so bothered at the concept of, you're not just going to give me a bunch of stuff right now, but they shouldn't do that, because how could you know what those 3 different drugs did to you?
Well, that was the thing. Was the first session I went in, I told him all my history about stuff, and then the next session I went in, and he goes, all right, well, I'm going to give you Klonopin. You'll take that every day. It's a slow release, so it'll last you all day.
Makes you sleep?
I'm going to, yeah. He's like, it's super drowsy.
Oh,
He
it's
goes,
an anxiety.
Yeah, it's an anxiety medication, but it makes you super drowsy. And he goes, and then I'm going to give you Xanax for when you have anxiety attacks, because my anxiety was off the rails. Like, to be 5 years sober and still throwing up because of anxiety is insane. So he was like, so I'll give you Xanax for your anxiety attacks. And then because you have trouble focusing, I'm going to give you Adderall as well. And you take that in the morning with the Klonopin and you'll be good to go. And I was out of the Xanax within like 4 days.
Also, it's like, maybe if you're a fucking robot, maybe if you're a robot in theory, where it's like, yeah, I'll concentrate with this, I'll come down with this, but it's like, what about your hormones? What about...
Well, and then also I've been on, because I've been diagnosed bipolar, like when I went to rehab and stuff. And so they put me on like Tramadol, which is like an antipsychotic medication. But I could not take it because it knocks you out. Like, it turns you zonked, like, into a zombie. And I was like, I would much rather deal with the consequences of my anger and sadness bouts of like snapping on people and then being like, hey, I'm sorry. Like, I'd much rather deal with those consequences than be walking around like all day long. Because I'm a creative. So I was like, I can't even think.
Did they like tinker with it though? Like, there's got to be some in between area.
Well, they did. They tried to give me a lower dose, but then that almost did nothing. And then it was like that weird line where like once you crossed over, then you were like just knocked out all day. So I was just kind of like, all right, we're just gonna deal.
It's a complicated fucking thing, and because like I've been on the same mix of meds for such a long time, because that guy, the good psychiatrist that did that, once we kind of got that down, I stayed on it. The issue is I've had long chunks of time where I've forgotten to take it. And then there was a while where I found this other psychiatrist that would prescribe me not time release Adderall. She would do the pills. Yeah. And somewhere in there, in a relapse period, I was like snorting them a lot. Oh. And so there's also been times where I like, so now I take Vyvanse, which is less like you can't snort it. Yeah. I think I have a couple times. Like, I'm pretty sure in different like.
Well, you get tired, you got to get going.
I think I don't know. Since I've been on it, I've been sober, I'm pretty sure. But I remember there was this one doctor. Vyvanse is really expensive if your insurance doesn't cover it.
Is it?
Very. And I remember this. For a while, it wasn't covering it. And this doctor I was seeing, he was like, look, I'll give you the type that's not the type that's like, I'll give you a pill that's for more than you're diagnosed. So then like you can cut the pill up. And I was like, he's like, if you can cut the pill up and then that way you can, it'll last much longer.
Yeah.
Which is great in theory. Like very nice of him. Let's go against the companies. Problem is, just the act of me cutting the pill.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Little big, little small. And I remember telling my sponsor at the time about it. And he was like, I think it's a slippery slope. I had a pill cutter and I was kind of like, I liked fucking with
I
the
want a
size.
little extra today, a little extra.
Exactly.
So you start the eating thing to deal with your anxiety and everything like that. And then you said you went to rehab before college.
So this is what happened. So this is really, I don't want to say, maybe weird's not the right word, but so I'm eating, like, I'm feeling so doped up from it. And I got in that battle of and I remember I would like drive to I'm from really rural Maine. So there's like 4 or 5 different stores. So I'd like go in and get a bunch of like ding dongs and then go to another one and like drive around and just chain smoke cigarettes.
I used to do that with fast food.
Would you?
Yeah, I would go because in Florida you're driving around, and when my anxiety would get out of control, especially when I first got sober, this is before my relapses and stuff. But like you just want sweet and salty and sweet and salty.
Sure.
So I'd go through like Wendy's and get a Frosty and a bunch of stuff, then go through McDonald's and get a milkshake and a bunch of stuff, and just keep on like.
And is that okay? Because it was helping you not drink. Like it was part of a big.
No.
Okay.
Because it's addictive behavior,
It's
and it's
addictive
also
behavior, yes.
horrible for you. And
So
then I would
bad.
always end up just vomiting everything up because I would feel like shit, and obviously I have body dysmorphia and stuff. So I was like, all right, I can't literally let my body digest thousands of calories
Sure.
of fast food. So I just go home and vomit.
See, I tried doing that. Couldn't hack it.
You couldn't?
No. I mean, thank God, because otherwise
Yeah.
I would have been full on into that. Like, I really wanted to.
I'm so bad at it. Even to this day, I mean, I'm so good at it that to this day, it's still kind of a problem.
Sure.
Because with my anxiety the way it is, and with the drinking the way it was, I could literally throw up at the drop of a hat.
Right.
No harm, no foul.
Right.
Like I could just right now I could do it if I wanted
Sure,
to.
I believe you. I believe you. Yeah.
Don't have to show us.
Yeah,
But so now it's actually become a challenge when I go out to a nice dinner, because you want to enjoy everything on the
Right.
dinner.
Yep.
And then I get home and I go, I could get rid of the stomach ache very quickly. But then I'm like, I just wasted hundreds of dollars from this dinner.
Sure.
Like, you know what I mean?
And it is bad for you.
Yeah, and it's horrible for your
Fucks up your
esophagus.
system.
And then the whole next day, it's like I can't. Like I'm like,
And you know what? It's also an addicty thing in that it's looking for a cheat.
Yeah. Yep.
It's like, how do I cheat this system of dealing with what I did with eating a bunch of food?
Yeah. And so I've gotten a lot better of it now, but I'm still the kind of person where the second I feel like genuinely like not like overeating, but like if I have a little bit of a stomach ache, I'll just go throw up. Because I'm just like, I'd much rather throw up now and be done with the stomach ache than have a stomach ache for like 6 hours.
I hate a stomach ache.
I can't.
I hate it. And I used to just eat so much that I would just feel like I was going to pop, and I would eat. I had this really bad stepmom for a long time. The one who I was with, my dad was with her up until I was halfway through college. Then they
Okay.
got separated. I'm like, you got separated from her when I'm out of the house? But I remember she would never want me to eat with them. So she had told me this story once where this is like fucking wild. My friend was asking her about when the first time she had sex with, and she said, well, the first time I had sex I was very young, and I had it with my father. And I was like, what? And I was like, you mean you were raped? And then she was like, I wasn't raped. And I was like, and I couldn't compute. And then I was like, what
Your
the fuck?
stepmom said this?
My old stepmom.
Yeah.
And I was like, you were raped. And then she was like, I wasn't raped. And I was like, you what? And then I was like, you were raped. And then for some reason she hated me because she associated me with being like, you were raped.
Yeah.
And her dad, like, I guess had like bought her this house and was like paying for her rent up into her like 40s or whatever until he died, until this whole thing. She did not like me. And my dad and I were really close, but he would still pick whatever woman he was with, like what her agenda was over like things with his kids.
Yeah.
Which he's apologized about very sincerely.
Well, and in the moment, I just, from my perspective, it'd be like, well, my kids are my kids. Like they're always going to be here, but like
Right.
I'm trying to keep this
Trying to
person
holler.
from leaving.
Yeah, totally. So I would be up on the computer in his office, and he would be like, oh, like, has Emma eaten? Like, should we call her for dinner? And she'd be like, no, she's eaten. And then she would like leave me food in the refrigerator.
Motherfucker.
Isn't that sad? And then I would just eat it, and I could like eat with my hands. I could have as much as I want, and then I would try to eat enough to like pass out.
Yeah.
And then I started I felt so out of control with that cycle. And for anxiety, my dad like sent me to an acupuncturist. So I was very privileged. I had a lot of resources like that. So I was going to this acupuncturist every week, and then I started coming in stoned because what I started doing was smoking enough pot, drinking enough that I wouldn't binge eat.
When did the smoking and drinking come to pass? Like, how did that even happen?
The drinking was 8th grade, and I was trying to impress my stepsister, who was like a senior in high school, and me and this other kid whose parents had been divorced, both of us. He lived really close to my mom's house, so we would like meet up in the woods, like in rural Maine, meet in the woods. We would like smoke some cigarettes, and then we would try to get alcohol or weed from his brother.
Okay.
And I started getting in trouble pretty much right away because I was like bringing the alcohol. I was always trying to get other people involved with it, which makes you pretty, like people were like, wow, Emma can get us alcohol.
Yeah.
And I would like steal alcohol from a store, and then I got
like what happened with that? Because you had mentioned
always
that
in
to
trouble.
Me.
I would always get in trouble.
So you just walk in and like grab the like wine off the shelf and walk out?
So this is before going to the rehab. This is 8th grade. What I would do is it was so sneaky. So I would walk into a store with like a big jacket, Maine winter, and they would have little bottles of wine, and I would take one, and there was this one aisle where it was like there's the wine aisle and the juice aisle, but there was one aisle where one part's wine, one part's juice. So I would walk through, pretending to like look at stuff, like grab a juice, whatever, and then I would like be like looking, and then I would take a bottle of wine and I'd put it on the juice aisle, and then I'd walk around a bunch, and then I'd walk back, and then I'd be grabbing the juice, pretending to read it while I'm taking my other hand and like shoving the wine bottle into my coat, the jacket sleeve.
Yeah.
So while I'm doing that, I'm doing like shoving it into my sleeve. But it doesn't seem weird that I'm spending such a long time on the freaking juice aisle because I put the wine behind the juice.
Yeah.
So I get all these little bottles of wine.
God.
And then I would bring them into school, and then pretty quick.
You'd bring them into school?
Yeah. On field trips, and then the teacher's like, "Where the kids are drunk." And like some kids are drunk.
What is your mentality? Like, I want to share this with my friends, or I just want to go
100%. I wanted to impress my stepsister, I guess. Even though she was just like,
I
what are you doing?
I totally get it. That's
it's crazy.
And
it made me feel so good. I wanted to be drunk all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm like, let me co-sign. It's not weird. Like, this is the best. I remember being like, I discovered the solution to everything.
If I had a nickel for every time I've said that, or I've had people on the show who are also sober say that, it's like, it's so weird to think how negative and how much of a poison alcohol is for me now. Because when I first started drinking, I was like, I figured it out.
Yeah, I figured it out.
I found my best friend. Never had a ton of friends. Never, I don't like when something goes wrong in my life. I don't really have too many people I can call.
Sure.
Like that I would want to bother with something. But when I had alcohol, I was like, I'm set.
100%.
And then it just
Did you
turned
think?
on me.
Were you like, how come no one told me about this? I remember thinking that.
No, because with mine it was different because I saw I was straight edge for a lot of high school because I saw other people, like my sisters were both and my brother were both incredibly popular. So they would go to parties and stuff and get drunk and have parties at the house when no one was home. And and at my parents drank, my dad and my stepmom and my mom and my stepdad at the time all drank. And I remember there were certain situations that I'd get in, especially with my ex-stepdad, where I was like, oh, this is vile. Like he'd get wasted and scream and yell and do dumb shit. And I remember sometimes even with like other family members, like they would just say things. And when you're a young kid, you don't understand.
Like they're acting crazy.
They're wasted.
Yeah, right.
So like they would say things, and then the next day I'd be like, "Hey, are we gonna go do that thing that we talked about?" And they'd be like, "What are you talking about?"
Oof.
Or they try to play it off like, "Oh no, I'm just not feeling well today.
Right.
Sorry." And it's like now looking back, it's like, "Oh, you don't even remember saying that."
Right.
So for the longest time, I was like, "I'm not gonna drink." So it was very prevalent around me, but I was like, "I see what it does. I'm never gonna do it." But meantime, I'm still suffering with all this anxiety and depression. So when I first got drunk, I was like,
oh,
this is what it's
fucking
about.
Awesome.
Let's go.
This is great.
Yeah.
And I started getting in trouble pretty quick because I got suspended. I got suspended from, I couldn't go to the 8th grade. I couldn't go to the field trip because I got in trouble for bringing alcohol on another field trip.
How did they know it was you?
I think it was pretty easy to trace. Like I brought it with me. Like, and who knows? Like maybe those other kids like weren't even wanting to be drinking, and I'm like, I got booze, and they're like, all right, like it was on this field. I would like to think that I probably like copped up to it, and I remember, but I wouldn't say where I got it. Like I would never admit that I forget. Like I wouldn't, if someone bought me alcohol, I didn't like snitch on them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some sick part of me is still proud of that to this day.
Oh, yeah.
Because I got in real trouble in high school, and they're like, "Where'd you get the beer? If you tell us where you got the beer, you'll be in less trouble." And I was like, "No."
How did that happen? How did the beer thing happen?
So get in trouble in 8th grade right away.
Mm-hmm.
Then go to high school. I went away to this school for kids with learning disabilities. I got in trouble there for bringing beer and alcohol onto campus. I don't remember where I got that alcohol.
You're just straight gooning.
I'm
just like, we're doing it.
I'm not good. And I was not good. I wasn't slick. I remember my parents being like, "You're not slick. Like, This, like, you get caught for everything. Which also, I remember being like, oh, it's good they think that, because if they think I get caught for everything, then they don't know. But I really did get caught for fucking everything.
It's like that line in Shawshank Redemption. Maybe you just, what I'm trying to say is you're not a very good thief.
Yeah, exactly. I was not good at it. Not good. And I went, but then in high school where I really got in trouble was I had beer in my backpack. And I remember I went to this party, and I remember I had like pressured someone's brother, like got us some beer, and I remember he didn't want to. He was like, I don't fucking know, like, yeah, I don't want to get you guys.
Are you at the time? Because there's people from like deadheads to burnouts to like heshers, all sorts of kind of like people who are drinking beer and smoking and stuff like that. What kind of category are you in? Are you like?
I was a little jockey. Okay. So I was like super in the closet. I always had boyfriends, but my school is so small. So I'm from rural Maine. Like, there's literally maybe at the start of my freshman year 400 kids, then it goes down to graduating classes like 70 people. So
529.
It's tiny. So people for their what's a 529?
No, I had 529.
Oh, 529. Yeah. I thought that was like a slang thing.
No.
I was like, 529. Yes, totally.
3,600 kids in my school.
That's crazy. Yeah. So for there to be a party, everyone had to go. So we didn't have the same divisions of, the goth kids do this. These
okay,
kids do
so
this.
Everyone's just kind of everybody.
Because otherwise there's no party. Yeah. Like, say there's like 50 kids that are going to go to a party. Like, everyone has to, like, the prom wasn't senior, junior. It was like everyone's
going to the prom.
Everyone's going to the prom. Sophomores and up had to go for there to be enough people to like dance.
Yeah.
Tiny. So I was more like sporty and jockey, but it was probably different than like what it would be like at yours.
So you're not, because we had the kids where you'd look at them and go, oh, they definitely have booze on them.
No, so I wasn't that. Yeah. I was definitely kind of preppy too, I would say.
So you get caught with beer. How did you get caught?
So in high school, this was awful because I had kind of turned things around where I like started getting good grades. I had gotten into a college. I'm excited. I went to this party, and I remember when I left, I was with my friend Phil, and I was like, let's put the beer in the backpack and hide it so it's not out in the car, because we were like driving and like drinking probably, which I feel awful about. But then I forgot that I put the beer in the backpack. We went in to practice marching, like say a week later, going to practice marching for graduation. Yeah. Forget there's beer in my backpack, and I bring my backpack into school because I have to return a bunch of books. I return the books, I toss my backpack down, and then I go to the beach and like drink and smoke and whatever. The next day I was driving to school. My mom comes out of her house and she's on my way to school. She like flags me down.
Oh no.
And I was like, what? And she's like, what have you done? The school just called and said there was beer in your backpack. And I remember like jumping on my car and like punching the roof of it. I was like, fuck. And she was like, you couldn't just make it to graduation. Both my parents said that. They're like, how could you just not just make it to graduation?
And this was something, the beer in the backpack wasn't like deliberate. Like, you weren't like, oh, I'm going to have beer in my backpack for class. You just happened to have it in there from the party.
From the party.
Oh, man.
And I remember I think I was like class president that year too, or vice president, and I didn't get to go to graduation.
So they just banned you from walking entirely?
They're like, you're suspended, but the suspensions last through graduation. And I was like, what if I was like, then the punishment doesn't fit the crime if it's supposed to be like, suspended for like 2 weeks. This is bigger than 2 weeks. I was like, what if I like talk about why you shouldn't do this, or I do community service? I like really try to negotiate, and they're like, maybe. And then like a day before graduation, they're like, no, you can't go.
Oh no.
I know. My fucking special needs uncle took off from work. He was going to come in. They had to tell him it wasn't happening. He didn't let it go for years.
God.
He'd be like, what happened graduation? What happened? I'd be like, he used to always see me go, beer in the backpack, beer in the backpack. I'd be like, can we get him a new talking piece? Like, he wouldn't get in a car with me. He'd be like, no, you hear about beer in the backpack? And I'd be like, years afterwards. Like, we're talking 13 years. Like, I'd introduce him to a girlfriend or something and be like, you know about beer in the backpack? And they're like, what? I'm like, what the fuck is he? Give me a break. So I was always getting in trouble.
Yeah, because that's, I not alcohol related, but I remember at my senior night, because again, always seeking the approval of others. Mm-hmm. I mooned, we were like going to Disney for grad night or whatever, and I mooned one of the other buses because everyone's like, shit. you won't. Right. And I was like, fucking yeah, well. Yeah. Like, I love attention.
Sure.
Like, let's go. So I mooned the other bus just real quick, didn't even think about it. And literally the buses like went and stopped. Because we were like pulling out of a rest stop or something.
Were you on a bus yourself?
Yeah, so it's like 3 different buses, all the seniors from my high school. And remember, it's 529 kids in the graduating class, so there's a ton of kids. And then one of Mr. Elliott, I'll never forget, the big old assistant principal, came off the other bus and onto our bus. And it was like that scene in Hook where he's like, you, not
How
you.
did he know
not
it was you?
You. He comes walking down. Because I was kind of like, I was a bit of a even though I was bullied a lot, I was still like,
okay, so
my
he just
main
knew.
focus was to try to like get other people's approval.
Fuck.
So he just comes walking down. And I don't even know if he knew it was me because he got there and I remember he was like, who did it? Who did it? And I was like, it was me.
Right.
And everyone's like, yeah, it was. And I was like, yeah. He pulls me off the bus though and he goes, you're done. This is like 2 weeks before graduation. He's like, you're not walking. You're not.
Are you serious?
Yeah, he's like, you're done. And I was like, it was a joke, dude. Like, calm down.
Wow, that is a big punish. So you didn't get to walk your graduation?
No, I did because then I get in the car with Mr. Piggott, and as he was like, you can't
Rough last name.
Yeah, he's like, you can't go to grad night, you can't do anything. And Mr. Elliott was like the hard ass, and so he was like, Mr. Piggott, you're gonna take him home. So he puts me in the car. And as we're driving back, we were just talking, and I was like, I feel so stupid. Like I just wanted everyone to like, they were cheering.
Mm-hmm.
And like 2 days later, they were like, for everything your brother, because my older brother went to the same high school, and this is when my older brother's at Cornell getting a PhD, and they go, for everything, your brother did, and
that kind of sucks that they even like gave that on him, like they're doing it as a favor to him.
Yeah, basically they were just like, because I was kind of a screw up by that time, but they were like, for everything, like we appreciate your brother did and everything. They were like, we're gonna let you walk, and I was like, thank God.
Wow. But your parents knew you got in trouble.
Yeah, and it was a big deal.
It was awful.
They were like, you're not gonna be able to walk. Like they lost it. Like I remember my dad was like, are you fucking
Same with
kidding
my dad.
me?
He had said once, I remember being like, I graduate in 2 weeks, and he's like, well, we'll see it when it happens. I remember
my
he
dad
said
did
that.
the same thing because I used to get the letters in the mail because you get senioritis and I've already been accepted to college and I was like, I'm fucking out of here.
Totally.
And I was in IB, so the only thing that mattered were the IB tests.
Right.
Like the actual grades literally didn't matter.
Right.
Because in order to get your IB diploma, you had to pass the test. They didn't even give a shit what your grades were.
Right.
So I just stopped like trying.
Totally.
So he would get like
Party
once
time.
every 9 weeks, he would get a letter in the mail saying like, oh, Brennan got a D in math. He's not going to be able to graduate. So he was just like, and I was like, I'm fine.
Right.
Like, I know where I'm at.
Right. I know the system better than they do. They don't know what they're talking about. Who do they think? They make the rules. Fucking.
But it was always this thing where my dad, same thing, would be like, well, we'll see. We'll see.
Someone said once, it sounds like a precursor, like your dad jinxed you. And I'm like, I wouldn't put that on him. Like,
Don't put that.
There had been enough back
Don't put that
behavior.
evil on me, Ricky Bobby.
Yeah, there had been enough like back stuff that he was justified in saying that.
Yeah.
But I got in fucking trouble, and I was always like fucking out of it from smoking and drinking so much because I was also trying to get so fucked up that I would just pass out and not overeat.
Yeah.
So this acupuncturist was like, if you go to college like this, you don't stand a chance. You need to get cleaned up. So I went to this rehab.
How many days?
It was 2 or 3 weeks, and it was in Connecticut, and it was on a farm thing. And I remember they were like, you should probably stay longer and really kick this thing. It's not a great time to go to school like right after this. And I was like, yeah. But
You don't make the rules, I make the rules.
Yeah, exactly. I see why you would think that, but you're wrong. And then I went to college and I was sober maybe the first like semester in college. But then I started drinking, but I didn't get in any trouble from drinking in college.
Okay.
That's when drinking, it was like I would drink a good amount, but I wasn't drinking the most. Like sure, lots of people drank a lot more than I did. I remember.
And were you out and everything at this time?
Yes, I came out like some point in my pretty quick into my freshman year. I always had, and like
because I figured going from rural Maine into like an actual college experience.
Yeah, then I
you'd be
came
like, oh,
right
yeah,
out.
hey, I can be myself
Yep.
now.
And then, but I would do some addicty things, and that I would like cheat. I was really bad in relationships.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't good about that at all, and but I wouldn't get in trouble from drinking. I don't think I got in any trouble from drinking in college.
That's
which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's
It's
when
really
I started
nuts.
getting. Once I left football, because I got my 8th concussion, and they're like, yeah,
Woo!
you can't. I'm like, you can't play anymore.
It's crazy.
So I was like, all right, I guess I'm done with football. But I had all because as an addict, I was actually the first 2 years of college I was actually good at because I had football. So I had something
Structure.
to dump all of my
Yep.
addiction into. We're doing workouts in the morning, and then you go to class, then workouts in the afternoon, then practice, and then by the time you get home, you're like, I'm just going to bed.
It's almost like you don't have enough time in your head to
party
Right.
and so we would still go out, and when we went out we would all have a great time, and it would be like a party, but we'd only do it like maybe once a week, maybe.
Right.
And then when I stopped playing football, I was like, well, I have all this free time, like I don't know what to do, so I just drank it all away. And
with
that's
other
when-
people.
At first, with
Yeah.
other people, but it just. But I was the instigator.
Sure.
I was always like you in high school.
100%.
I was showing up at people's houses with
Let's
like
fucking
bottles.
go.
Let's
Yeah.
fuck. I got a final tomorrow. Well, fucking who gives a
Right.
shit?
Totally.
Or like I just finished up. Like I had one buddy, Dan. He's the original drinking buddy. The whole reason I started the podcast. He was my best friend in college, and I remember I would time my drinking out with his finals. So like if he had a final at 11 o'clock, I'd be at his apartment at 12. Like let's fucking, you're done. Let's go.
Jeez,
So
is he sober now?
No, Dan still likes to have a good time, but he never had a problem.
Good for Dan.
He was always the one who was like, dude, I don't want, and I was like, I need this.
Right. Come on, man.
And he'd be like, all right, man.
I wasn't the instigator in college, and I really don't know what.
That's
I don't
so
know
crazy
what
to
the
go
fuck.
from high school
I know.
where you're the one bringing booze
Always.
everywhere, and then
High school, 8th grade, I really, but right, it was like I started having real, like, because there's so much structure in college, and I was doing really well in the classes.
Yeah.
And then when I graduated is when it really took a turn because I just didn't know what I wanted to do. Like there was like, I had done really well, and then it was like, okay, so what are you going to do? And I hadn't put time into that. I was so focused on like my social life, and I was like spoiled where my parents weren't like, what are you going to do for a job? What are you going to do for a job? What are you gonna... And I interned at the State House, and I always did like student government. I did really well, and then I graduated, and then it was
what'd you graduate with?
Philosophy and public relations.
Yeah.
And then I think I had like 2 minors. Like I really went for it.
Yeah, you went for it.
I went for it. And then, but when I graduated, it was like, I remember drinking so much the end of senior year. Like that's when I was drinking like 30 martinis, and I was just drinking a lot.
Yeah.
But I didn't drink by myself or really do a day drinking situation till pretty quick after college.
Okay, so what happened? Where did you go after college?
I was in Boston. I took the first job that I applied to.
Okay.
So the first job I applied to that I got with no thought put into it, nothing. Like no idea to think of what do you want to do? How do you
just
want to
like
do
you're
it?
hired. You're like, all right, cool.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
And I had it was recruiting construction executives. Like it made no fucking sense. But I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try to invent something. So I was like pretty focused on that.
Yeah.
And I started drinking all the time. And I remember I got laid off. But luckily when I got laid off, it was when like everyone was getting laid off.
Mm-hmm.
The economy crashed. And then I started like, I remember like drinking sometimes. I remember being really hungover and then like drinking in the morning.
Are you at all at this point thinking about entertainment? Like back to your days at the internship in the music studio or anything? Is anything crossed your mind about like, oh, maybe I want to get back into that yet?
I think it didn't because I knew that I hadn't like put anything in place for it while I was in school. Like it was kind of like, but at that point too, it was like I really, it was like a real failure to launch. Like I hadn't put any thought into, and as a kid, I always fantasized, what am I going to do when I'm older? What am I going to do when I'm older? And then that all kind of went away because it was like I had so much fun in college. Like everything was oriented around do the work, get good grades, partying.
Yeah.
So then when I graduated, it was kind of like, wait, we're still kind of doing that, right, guys? But like
we're still doing that, right,
guys? Right? Hello? Is anybody here? No. And I still had friends from college around, and we would party, but it was like, I remember just creating chaos quick. Like I had 2 girlfriends that like imploded, and then I was staying outside of Boston, smoking, drinking, really drinking a lot.
Yeah.
That's when and then somewhere in there, I started doing comedy. And then I was off to the racetrack, so it was like drink.
So when you got laid off is when you kind of started getting into
That's
comedy?
when I started getting into comedy. And I started drinking right away. Like the first time I did an open mic before it, I got wasted.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, woo! And I was like, and in my mind, it went well. And then I was always trying to create the perfect cocktail of I need to get like just tipsy enough that I don't feel bad if it doesn't go well.
Yep.
And then I would also try to like mix it with my like Adderall. Like I was always trying to create the perfect like remedy.
Mm-hmm.
And it got just so out of hand, I'd say probably. Because then I went to New York for grad school to like throw my parents a bone for like I'm doing comedy, but I'm going to grad school.
Oh, so you came to New York for comedy,
school,
but then also.
But I said it was for school.
Yeah.
And
we had a comic on here, Josh Szyminski, who's also from rural Maine.
Really?
Yeah. He's only a couple years in, but same thing where he was like. His whole plan the whole time was to do comedy, but he went to college because his parents really wanted him to go to college. So he just happened to go to college in New York. But his whole thing was like, I'm doing comedy.
100%.
Yeah.
Like it was so, I remember they gave me a really good deal to go there. Like I don't know why, I really don't know what, and I was fucking out of it because I would go, I don't know how I did. Like I
What
would
was
like
the grad school for?
media studies.
Okay.
But I was so fucked up the last year that like I remember I didn't finish my independent study, and also you had to take one math class or something, and I hated it and I just wouldn't go. And then I plagiarized. I bought a paper online to submit, and I don't think I got in trouble for it, but it's so hazy.
Yeah.
I was drunk. I was doing like open mics and bar shows all the fucking time. And at graduation, I see pictures of myself on that graduation. I look like shit. So puffy.
For your master's?
I look like shit.
Yeah.
And I fall asleep at the graduation, and I had a moment of clarity where I was like, I'm going to kill myself. Like, I cannot live like this. I remember putting my thumbs on like that third eye area between your, and I was like, you have to get sober. Like, you have to.
Something's got to change.
Like, you're gonna die. You're gonna self-destruct. So I leave New York. I go back to Boston. I move in with my mom.
Your mom's living in Boston?
My mom's living in Boston. Okay. And again, no thought into what I want to do, because I was like, I want to do comedy, but like I stopped doing comedy. Mm-hmm. I got a therapist. I started going to AA meetings, and I got a job really quickly again. I contacted a recruiter, and I was like, can you send me an example of the perfect resume? And he was like, sure. So he sends me something. I go, what do you know? It's just like my resume. I called up a buddy that I'd become friends with, someone that owned a comedy club, and I was like, can I say, I had worked for him for a summer. I go, can I say I worked for you for 6 years instead of one summer? He was like, sure.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit. So I was like, can I say I was your marketing assistant, whatever the fuck? I said I made 100 cold calls a day, like just lied.
Yeah.
What do you know? I get hired like right away because my resume was fucking awesome. Outstanding. I had my friend who's an actress be my reference. I remember the HR person being like, we were on the fence, and then we talked to your friend, and like, and she was
put
like,
it over the top.
Over the top. She was like, I made it sound like you should be president of the United States. I was like, it's an entry-level sales job, but I appreciate that. But it was a gift.
Your actor friend was very Daniel Day-Lewis in that moment.
She killed it.
Yeah.
She killed it.
Emma. We're talking about my Emma.
Exactly. They're like, she's perfect for it. It was selling educational travel. I don't know the maps. Like I did it for maybe like 8 or 9 months before they let me go, because I didn't sell anything.
Yeah.
But it was so good because I was doing therapy, I was dating, and I was going to AA meetings. I wasn't working the steps.
Were you sober at the time?
Sober.
Okay.
I was sober for that full year.
For anyone listening, the reason I asked that is because I've gone to a lot of AA meetings. Fucked up.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't think I've done that before, but I've been relapsed, and I've gone and driven to an AA meeting because like I had like a girlfriend or something who was like, you got to go to a meeting.
Yeah.
And then I'll just sit in the fucking parking lot and then drive when it's done.
Yeah, I've gone into ones where I'm like pulling the little minis out of the center console, walking into the meeting. Oh, but
heartbreaking.
No, yeah.
But understandable. You got yourself there.
No delusions of like I wasn't telling people I was sober. I would be very open and honest. Like, I'm fucked up right now. I want to stop, but I just can't.
Oh my God, that's so heartbreaking.
Yeah, and then I would leave the meetings, and then everyone would be like, you want to come get food with us? I'd be like, no, I got stuff to do. And I'd drink the little minis, put them in the center console, and drive home.
It's so sad. Because also it's like, you get it.
Yeah.
Like, you get it. I remember being so scared of like relapsing and people knowing that I relapsed. And then like there was this one guy who we knew the other one was sober. I would see him all the time at comedy clubs. He had been sober a long time. I relapsed. I was trying to hide from him. Like I would move my cup, my beer, whatever. And one time he said something like, it's okay. It's okay. And
it took me a long time to learn that, because they
get it.
When we first get into sobriety and first start going to meetings, you hold everyone else with all this time in such high regard that I was so embarrassed and scared. That's why it took me so long to get sober the next time. I was so scared to go back to meetings and stuff. And then now looking back on it, like whenever I have friends that newly get sober or like want to try sobriety or whatever, looking back on it, I'm just like, dude, it's okay.
It's okay.
Like, fucking, it's fine.
That's our minds building things up, too. Like, sensationalized, dramatizing. Because and then the same guy who I was always avoiding, at one point, when I was like, I was sober for a little bit, someone was like, did you hear that, like, blah, blah, has been drunk at shows? And I was like, so I reached out to him and I was like, hey, do you want to go to a meeting? And he was like, no. And he was like, I'm going to drink tonight. I'm going to get some vodka, drink tonight, go tomorrow. And I was like, what if you meet up with me, we go, and then you drink right after that?
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll walk you over to the liquor store, like whatever. And I like the amount of no judgment. Like I was like, oh my God, this is what people feel when someone relapses.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, dude, I get it.
Yeah, like now I get it.
Yeah. And even I remember, and I didn't talk to my sponsor and this friend of mine who used to be in the program. And and I remember being like, just thinking that they were thinking like, Emma doesn't take this seriously.
Yeah.
Like she's relapsed when we didn't. And like, then when I finally did call them, they're just like, good to hear from you.
Yeah.
Like, what's up? Like,
I'll never
we've
forget
got our own stuff going on.
when I called the first call I made when I got out of the hospital, my last drunk was to my sponsor, and I was sobbing.
Right.
And he goes, dude, I haven't heard from you in almost a week. Like, I'm just glad you're alive.
Totally.
And I was like, what?
Right. You're not mad at me?
Yeah, you're not pissed off.
Right.
It's insanity.
It's insanity.
What happened with you? So you're doing comedy, you graduate with the master's program, you get the job in sales, and then you get let go. Do you do comedy full time?
No. So I was really healthy, too. Like I was feeling good. So it's probably like 26 at this time. So I come back to New York and I was like, I'm going to be an agent or do stand up again. But I was on unemployment.
Okay.
So it gave me a little wiggle room. So I got this internship with a friend of mine at a production company. And she's not in entertainment anymore, but I was interning there and like applying to some places. And I applied for a couple talent agency things. I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't, none of them clicked. And then at some point I went to an open mic again and actually, you know what? There was someone from AA that used to run some mics and she was like, why don't you just go to one of my mics?
Okay.
And I was like, all right. And then, and then I did it and then I started doing mics again, but I was like much more balanced about it. Mm-hmm. And I would run into people and like no one knows what's going on. So this is also like, whenever we assume what someone's thinking, it's not. It's for me, it's self-centered because like I'll be like, 100%. You're like, oh, where am I? Like no one even knows. Like,
no one even noticed.
No one even knew I was gone for like a year and a half.
Yeah.
And like they were like, oh, like where you been? And I was like, I stopped. And I was like, if I was still doing comedy, you would have seen me around.
Yeah.
And then my friend was like, you don't need to tell. People don't need to know. And I was like, well, I would think they would then think that I need to have more new jokes. And she was like, no one cares. No one cares. But this guy I had interned before,
Emma, trust
no
me,
one knows your jokes. No one cares. They're thinking about themselves, truly.
Yeah.
So self-centered with it. But this guy who I had interned for, he's like, do you want to do this Gotham Access like TV taping?
Yeah.
You can do it. You don't have to bring people. And I did it and I got it. And then I did it and then
This is for Live at Gotham?
Live at Gotham. And then I submitted I submitted to college agents. And the first college agent was like, I want in. And then the other ones were like, well, how much time do you have? And I was like, 12 minutes. They're like, no.
Yeah.
Call us in a couple years.
So you got the Live at Gotham taping, which is a TV credit, and you just used that and just submitted that to college agents. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the one that's because
I got a couple really good tapes.
Because also college agents are small operations.
Yeah.
Like if you're reaching out to a big talent agency, like they probably can't even take submissions.
Yeah.
But a college agent is usually very small, and it's all based on submitting you to these like certain showcases. So they'll happily submit you to the showcase.
NACA and all that kind of stuff.
So the very first year, now I haven't gotten into many NACA since then, but that first year I got into shit tons of them.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the time, material-wise. And I was stressed out about it, but I stayed sober.
For a moment, I thought you meant you didn't have the
time.
I was like, you're on unemployment. Like, you got all the time.
Yeah. I was on unemployment. That kind of worked out really well. But somewhere when I was doing colleges, and I had no sense of like
how much time
health.
are you doing?
At a school, you're supposed to do like 45 minutes to an hour, and
but
I
you
probably
only have like 20,
maybe 20. But it's okay because also it's like the stakes are pretty low.
Oh yeah,
and it always just kind of worked out.
Yeah, Burr always talks about like just you go on in the cafeteria and everyone's trying to eat lunch, and you're like, wait, this wasn't.
You'll fill the time.
Yeah.
And they won't know if you end early.
What is that, egg salad? Huh?
Exactly. Who's this guy eating that fucking egg salad? It's okay.
Yeah.
But the problem was I didn't put any care into. First of all, I didn't understand how like taking percents out. Like I was like, oh, this is great. Like, yeah, I'll be in Arkansas and then I'll go to Vermont. And then I remember the college agent being like, are you sure? Like this isn't really routed right. And I'd be like, just get my body there. I'll make it work. So I ran myself into the ground and I relapsed.
And you don't take into account
somewhere in there.
Well, I was going to say you don't take into account expenses and stuff.
I didn't take any of that into account.
Because they're like, oh, $5,000. And you're like, that's more money than I've ever seen doing this. And then they're like...
I was getting way less than that for the
But you know what I mean? Then it's
totally.
like 10% goes there. You have to cover all your travel and stuff. And then you're like, wait, a plane ticket's $600 round
100%.
trip. Yeah, and you're like, wait, what?
Just not sober thinking. And also not thinking, oh, I need to sleep. I need to like... get rest. I need to work on the set. Like no. I remember just being like, I gotta get my carcass there. Like I remember whipping through the backwoods of Vermont to do like a community college. Like I flew in from somewhere. It was like a 11-hour travel day to like get in and get to like some little lodge for like 8 kids. And then it's like, for what? Like, truly, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah, exactly. For what? So
Burnt
then
myself out, totally.
And that time, and then you fell off.
Fell off, yeah.
Did you feel like what we were talking about, where you're like, I can't tell anybody, like I'm just going to keep this to myself? Or
no, because not enough people knew about the sobriety stuff then.
Because you weren't talking about it.
I wasn't talking about it that much. And I remember I went to LA. I had gotten a manager because I reached out. I was like, I'm doing all these colleges. Like, I would like a manager. And I got a manager from that.
Mm-hmm.
And he was really good. I didn't appreciate him at the time. I think he was the best manager I've ever had. I reached back. Doesn't do management anymore, but I was like, I didn't appreciate you. And he was like, good to finally hear someone say that. This was like 10 years later.
Yeah.
I was like, you were great. And he was like, I was.
You're right.
You're right. I was. I was like, you really were. Like, you were such a hustler. You were on it. You were great. But he got me this showcase. I didn't do well at the showcase. My phone died. And I was getting acid reflux.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple days before, I went into this like walk-in clinic in LA, and the doctor prescribed me Xanax.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm sober. Like, I don't know if I should have Xanax. And he was like, okay. He's like, we can take this for acid reflux, but this Xanax will help you relax. And I was like, okay.
Okay.
So I'm not even I'm more of an upper person.
Yeah.
But
Did you know about Xanax at the time?
I knew it was addictive because I remember saying, I don't know if it's worth it for me to have this for this like mild heartburn. But I took it. And then I remember telling people, like, I can't believe I got Xanax. And people were like, give me some of that fucking Xanax.
Yeah.
And then after that show that went badly, I felt awful about it. I remember because I had to like stay and network afterwards, and I was like, I just feel I couldn't deal with the feelings.
Yeah.
Couldn't deal with it. I was like, what am I doing? And I also knew, I was like, I can't keep doing colleges like this, like something fucking. And then I went to get some food, and I remember like maybe I got a snack and they had beer at the place. I was like, no. But then I drove to a 7-Eleven. I got some Miller Lite. I sat in the parking lot, drank a couple beers. I'm like, thank fucking God.
You finally feel better.
Took the Xanax, and then I was really off to the racetracks.
Yeah.
I think for like 2 or 3 years I was out, and it was great for a little bit.
And you're doing comedy full time now?
Doing comedy, doing the colleges, snorting Adderall and in a way that like all of a sudden made it be no problem that there's no health imbalance because I could fucking work myself to the bone.
Yeah.
And I looked like shit, though. I mean, it was like
because you're not working out at all.
No, I mean maybe here and there, but it was just like it was just a mess. And I was snorting a lot of Adderall.
Yeah,
I would drink before I went on general meetings. At lunch, like I remember, I would like have a couple beers and then be making phone calls, like catching up with people.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, have you ever done it where you've blacked out and then made a couple phone calls?
Probably.
And then you get text the next day, like, "Hey, man." So I ended up turning into the thing that I hated the most. Because I was talking about to you about earlier, people would say things to me, and then the next day it'd be like, "Hey, are we going to do that?" And
right.
Like, what are you talking about? Fast forward 10, 12 years, I'm calling people wasted because, I'd started doing comedy. I'm like trying to get out on the road, doing a lot of just like open mics and just bullshit in Florida. So I'm calling my friends who are in entertainment who have moved on, like to New York or LA. And I'm like, we got to put a showcase together, like a Dirty South kind of thing, blah, blah. And then the next day I'd get a text like, "Hey, what dates do you want to do that show?"
Fuck.
And I'd be like, What show?
Yeah. And you're like, I'm not going to get it together to do all that stuff.
Yeah, like I'm not going to get it together to go to work.
It's
like I'm not going to.
Wild. It's not good. It's really talk about you're going to crash and burn.
Yeah.
So I don't remember what exactly made me.
I was going to ask you,
because that was like, I must have done, what would happen a lot was I would do something so shitty with dating, and then I'd be like, oh, I got to get sober. Like I would fuck someone over that I was dating, but I was not working the steps. Like only in the past 3 years did I start working the steps, because I remember just being like, okay, what have I done? Every time before I didn't do the steps, just didn't do them. And then this was the time. And it's so stupid because it's like, that's what everyone says to do. But then when I started doing them.
It seems like such a foreign concept when you first get there. And I resisted the steps for a long time. And I tell people now, because,
Did you?
Oh, I've worked the steps several times.
But you resisted them for a while? Yeah, I really resisted. I was really like, I don't need to.
I went to my first meeting at like 22. And I didn't get sober till I was 30. So I resisted it for a long time.
Yeah.
And I would always get through the first couple. And then I would just kind of be like, nah.
100%.
Like even with my current sponsor now, he's the only one I've ever done a true fifth step with, and that's only because. And even then, like I'd get to 8 and 9, and then I would stop, and then I would end up relapsing because I would just stop doing the work.
Totally.
But I tell people all the time, because we meet a lot of people that are sober who just don't drink. Excuse me, they're not sober; they just don't drink. But sometimes they're so angry, and I'm like, hey, have you thought about like doing this?
Totally.
And they're like, no, absolutely not. Like, that's not for me. And I'm like, okay, like I'm not going to push it on you. But at the same time, I'm like, I I've been you.
Sure.
Like I've been there.
I don't know how they stay not
just
drinking because I would snap
the white
way
knuckling
quicker.
it is insanity to me. Because I've also had other people who have not drank for a while, then then they start drinking again. Then they'll come to me. They come to me and they go, I don't understand it. I didn't drink for 3 years or 2 years or a year, and I was miserable every day. You don't drink. You're in these bars. You're in these clubs all the time, and you seem like the most gregarious, happiest guy there, but you don't drink. And I was like for me, it was the steps, dude. Like I don't know what else to tell you. Like I don't.
And those bars, like being in a bar at night, like that stuff is not triggering for me too.
It doesn't matter to me at all.
Yeah, if you're working a good program and you're like spiritually fit, you're not gonna be like fiending.
Yeah,
like
I tell people all the time because there's a passage in the, I think it's 119 or page 110, something like that. But it talks about how if you shield yourself from everything, you're not getting any better. You're just hiding from it. And I've taken that so to heart because
100% because a lot of times you want to hide from stuff.
Yeah, and then people are like, I don't understand how you're in bars. That'd be so triggering for me. And then I'm like, then you're obviously not in any sort of condition to be out.
People say, is it okay if I have alcohol around you? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. Like, and also that would be, I wouldn't leave if I was at the point where it wasn't, like I would go somewhere.
Well, that's what I'd say, because Savannah loves wine. So we've got like hundreds of bottles of wine at the house. And then she has these like random liquor bottles because she doesn't drink liquor very often. So they're just in there for like when company comes over. People are like, how do you do that? And I go, if I wanted to drink, first of all, it wouldn't be any of this shit.
Yeah.
Second of all, I don't need anyone's, like, if I'm going to drink, it's already been decided.
Yeah, it's not, like, the problem isn't like, well, I don't know where to get it.
I'm not going to wake up one day and be like, oh, there's wine here?
Right. Totally. Could you imagine, like, if it was that? Like, that's the block that you don't know where to get it. You got bigger issues. Like, an addict will find what they need.
Oh, my God.
Come hell or, like.
Do you know how many times I've snorted baby aspirin because I tried so hard to get Coke?
Wow. I didn't even know you could do that.
Oh, yeah. They just grind up baby aspirin. Which,
really?
Thank God they would do that because now everyone's doing the fentanyl shit.
Sure.
But they would just grind up baby aspirin and mix it with the Coke to cut it. Or laxative. And then that way it'll last long. Like, they could sell a lot more. Thank God they're not doing what they're doing with fentanyl now because this is 10 years ago. But, like that's insane to me when people are always just like, if it's around. I go, if it's around, booze is always around.
It's always around. And it's like, that's not the experience of you having a cocktail at a party is not even what I'm mildly interested in. You
guys, like these people at my restaurant who will drink half a glass of wine and then go to like ask for the check. And I'm like,
get out of here.
What are you doing with the rest of that glass of wine?
You're weird. Yeah,
you're a weirdo.
You're a weirdo. This guy's or my girlfriend sometimes will eat a donut hole. And I'm like,
just one?
Yeah, and I go, I don't understand what you're doing. Like, I don't want. Why would you do that? The time
you're mocking me.
You're mocking me, you bitch. If I want a donut hole, the last time I like went into that was like I was like spiraling about something, and she went up to drop something off for her cousin. There was a Dunkin' Donuts below it, and I like snuck in and bought a bunch of donuts. And then she was like, "Did you buy some donuts?" I'm like, "No." And then I was like, "Yeah, I don't know why I lied." And then I ate them in the bathroom. And she's like, "You don't have to eat them." She's like, "I'm not judging whatever you're eating." And I was like, yeah, I have to eat them in the bathroom.
You don't understand how this works. You don't
understand. Like this is the experience I want. It's in the bathroom by myself. Lights are off. I'm muttering that tomorrow I'm going to like be healthy.
Yeah. Oh, this was so much fun. I'm so happy you came on. Plug everything one more time.
All my tour dates are up at IamEmmaWillmann.com. I'm going to be in, actually I got Columbus, Cincinnati, Nashville, Birmingham, Alabama, Orlando, Tampa, and I'm on Instagram at Emma Willmann and TikTok at I Am Emma Willmann.
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Anytime.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for listening at Brennan T. Comedy on all social media. One Man Show is booked January 30th, 6:30 and 8:30 at the Producers Club. The tickets will be on sale probably in the next couple of weeks. And subscribe on Patreon. Get your Ex Drinking Buddy merch. We'll talk to y'all next week.